Did a person named John Titor travel from 2036 back to the early 2000s? Or is it a hoax perpetrated by someone living in modern-day Florida? You can turn back now, or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. Greetings, I am a time traveler from the year 2036. I am on my way home after getting an IBM 5100 computer system from the year 1975. These are the words of someone claiming to be a fellow named John Titor. Now, we had some great feedback from our time travel episode, and people asked us to talk more about this fellow. I'm going to refer to him as JT, just so everybody knows it's not Justin Timberlake, John Titor, at least for this show. So he became an urban legend over the past few years. As we write this, we're all traveling through time together, 1 second at a time toward the future. But this guy claims that he violated the bounds of linear time and traveled back first to 1975 to get this IBM, and then stopped in 2000 when he began speaking to people online. However, an article by IO9 claims that Titor actually sent his first contact to contemporary humanity via 2 faxes to our favorite radio show, Coast to Coast AM. But here's the thing. Titor has become a matter of great debate, both for people who believe that he physically traveled through time and for people who believe that it's a bunch of malarkey. And why is that? Well, it's because he made several predictions. Some of these predictions have been proven incorrect, and some have not yet come to pass. Just for an example, one that turned out to be incorrect was his prediction that the United States would have civil war in the mid-2000s, 2003, 2004, 2005, and that this would culminate ultimately in the dissolution of the United States at a point in time that hasn't occurred yet. The other one was that he stopped on his way back from 1975 to visit the year 2000 because he wanted to see the effects of the millennium bug. Now, as we know, that was called Y2K in the late 90s, and many people were concerned that due to the way computer date stamps were written, we would reach this massive collapse of electronic infrastructure. As you can tell, this didn't happen, or if it did, it didn't happen in near as catastrophic a way as some people would imagine. And, his detractors argue, it didn't happen in near as catastrophic a way as Titor seemed to believe it would occur. But there are some other predictions he made that have not yet come to pass. Consider that one of his biggest claims was that there would be a global nuclear war in 2015. Now, as we're taping this, it's 2013, so we still have 2 years to see how that one works out. And I think it can be safe to say that we all sort of hope it doesn't happen. I'm just assuming. 2, AIDS will be defeated, and this is often taken to mean a cure of some sorts. Now, as we know, millions around the world currently suffer from some sort of version of HIV or AIDS. But we also know that recently there have been tremendous steps taken toward curing HIV patients. Most famously, a few years back, there was an unnamed patient who, due to bone marrow transplant, was cured of HIV. Recently, a very young child was also cured of HIV, or if we want to hedge that a little, the HIV virus sunk to below detectable levels in this kid's body. This is amazing stuff. Does it mean that Titor's prediction will come to pass? Right now, that's anybody's guess. So Titor has a defense too about the predictions that didn't actually work out. And his defense is hinged on this idea of a multi-universal theory. And what this means is that he's saying when he travels back from the future, let's make this dot 236, when he travels back, he's actually traveling on a slightly parallel line. So it's not so much that he's traveling back from 2036 in his timeline, or world line as he calls it, but that he's traveling back to a close world line. So not exactly the same universe, more of a parallel dimension. Pretty interesting stuff, especially if it's true. And also it's kind of convenient because this means that he can simply say, or his defenders can simply say, well, yeah, that didn't happen in our timeline. So when he's traveling back in time, of course, he's claiming that since this is a parallel universe, not everything's going to work out the same way. This is going to be easily familiar ground to fans of science fiction or even fans of recent sci-fi TV shows like Fringe. Now let's talk about some of his detractors, okay? His detractors say that there's no record of a Titor family in the area of Florida where JT said he would be born in the late 80s. Again, not Timberlake. There's an excellent, I don't know if it's quite fair to say it's an excellent debunking job, but it is an excellent investigation of Titor's claims because they were able to, in an Italian documentary, trace back some IP addresses used by Titor. They were also able to hire a private detective named Mike Lynch. And this detective found that maybe a fellow named John Rick Haber, who lives in ordinary time, just like we do, was actually responsible for the claims of John Titor. And this would mean that John Titor would be a hoax perpetrated by Mr. Haber. And Mike Lynch has his evidence phrased this way. He says that John Rick Haber's brother owns something called the John Titor Foundation. The John Titor Foundation, by the way, owns the copyright to a lot of Titor material. In other words, a potential to profit from this story. So you always have to think when you start following the money, right? And then something else interesting, Haber, it turns out, is a computer scientist. So Lynch argues he would easily know about the IBM 5100, the Unix 238 problem, and there's a post office box application linking Haber with the Titor Foundation. We're getting a lot of this information again from an IO9 article by a fellow named Keith Veronese, and you can check out our blog on this to read the article directly. So that's the question. What do you think? Do you think that the John Titor story is a hoax perpetrated in the hope of earning profit? Or do you think there are people quickly trying to debunk this to ignore the idea of time travel? Is it possible that simply by the act of traveling to the past, Titor traversed the timeline, and then the predictions that he says came to pass just didn't happen in our worldview? These are questions that are difficult to answer. It's difficult to sort of falsify this claim without having access to these parallel worlds or even hard, widely accepted proof that these worlds might exist. But we do want to hear what you think. Now, as you know, Matt and I walk away every time we do an episode or a series wishing we could have put more stuff in here. And we love reading the YouTube comments, which we do read, because we always find new and fascinating points or perspectives, no matter what we're covering, whether it's Venezuela, time travel, what have you. So we would like it if you could drop us a line and let us know what you think about the time travel idea. And of course, yes, the Great Scott thing is a Back to the Future joke. I know it might not be that funny, but we're fans. And I'm not going to do a Doc Brown impersonation because I think you guys deserve better. And I forgot the wig. But anyway, let's do some listener mail. So if you wrote to us, we, as we said, do read these, and we wanted to just give a shout out to a couple people who had sent us some old-fashioned emails. All right, let's start with Anthony. Anthony says, "Dear Matt and Ben, huge fan of the show, spread word among my friends and coworkers." Hey, thank you. I'm fast forwarding here. The original beginning at House 1984 and the music over the end quote always gives me chills. Well, we appreciate that. We're always glad when people pick up on those little Easter egg things. That's not the only one though, so keep watching. And he suggested that it seems like you have been dealing with a lot of modern conspiracies lately. Not that there aren't enough of those. So I'd like to see some of the older or more ancient conspiracies. So he named some things that we've covered before. I just want to read these off to you and let us know in the comments if this sounds like something you'd want to hear about in the future. Number 1, ancient civilizations besides Atlantis. So we list Mu, Hyperborea, Shangri-La, Tian. 2, Nephilim and advanced beings in Mesopotamia. 3, the pyramids of Giza. 4, gods walking among us. Now this is interesting. We do have an ancient astronauts or ancient aliens episode, but we're always up for more if you guys are interested. 5, American involvement in the Panama Canal. There might be some stuff there. I don't know, Anthony. And Leonardo da Vinci, just the name Leonardo da Vinci, cut that part. The US government planning attacks. So this would be like the Pearl Harbor, the US Maine. Apocalypse theories, biblical conspiracies like the Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia, Jesus being married, was Noah's Ark found in Mount Ararat in Turkey. And he's got a couple more here, but we want to go on to some more listener mail. Thank you for writing, Anthony, and please everybody let us know what you think. Mr. S writes to us and says, I sent an email a week ago asking if you could make a YouTube episode about a few different subjects, and we're still working on those. I had another subject that could interest you called monoatomic gold. All right, we have one last email by a person named Armando. Armando says, I think it would be really interesting to do an episode about Jack Whiteside Parsons, one of the founders of Jet Propulsion Labs and follower of Aleister Crowley. He was also an early sci-fi fan and associate of L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, we would love to do that. It's fascinating and frightening to some people when we consider the occult habits of some of history's most influential scientists. He also says he's fascinated by cults like the Nubian Nation and the Raelians, the largest UFO cult outside of Scientology. He's saying that, Scientology lawyers, this is Armando, this is not us, we're reading listener mail. Thank you. I thought that was fascinating because some people don't know that the Nubian Nation had a headquarters here in South Georgia. We wanted to visit it before it was bulldozed, but unfortunately it has been demolished. He also thought the mystic court of Alexander Scriabin would be fascinating, and he mentions the founder of Theosophy, Helena Blavatsky, and he'd like to hear an episode on the Library of Alexandria. I know we're throwing a lot of stuff at you guys, but just pick one or two, the ones that you would most like to hear in future series, and please do let us know. Now, one thing we did before we started recording this, Matt and I went on Twitter and we said, hey, we're about to do one of our last series on time travel, drop us a line and we'll read it on the air. So Chris Gomez wrote to us and said, what's the haps on the Cyprus banks? For the record, we responded to Chris and we said, the people in Cyprus probably want to know the answer to that too. So we're on that one. We also had Tyler write to us, Rocket Tyler on Twitter, and said, hey, since it's on time travel, can you make the episode travel from Friday to today? We would, Tyler, but we don't want to disrupt the timeline. I mean, great Scott. Really should have brought that wig. Another person raised a great point here and said the video was recorded on Wednesday. It's going to be posted on Friday. It's going to be watched 6 months or 60 years from now. Media does transcend time, doesn't it? That's an excellent point and pretty philosophical. So that's going to wrap up what we have today. We have to say, I personally have to say, that I didn't find any compelling evidence that John Titor really was a time traveler, at least not from this timeline. Again, it's impossible to verify if there's some sort of parallel universe from which he traveled at this point. But being as fair as possible, if you check out the documentary and you check out some of the sources we listed, there's some pretty strong circumstantial evidence that the person calling himself John Titor might be John Rick Haber, and might be more than one person, because there's no proof that the person who sent the faxes in the late 90s also went on the internet in the early 2000s. So with this concluded, thank you so much for watching our newest series on time travel, and we hope you stay tuned because we're going to do something that's not way in the past and not a current event. What we're going to check out is this strange habit that politicians seem to have of prematurely dying in plane crashes. So tell us if there are any politicians you'd like us to specifically mention or any other mysterious crashes you'd like to know about. You can drop us a line on Facebook. You can befriend us on Twitter. And as always, you can send us an email at conspiracy@discovery.com. So tell us if there are any politicians you'd like us to specifically mention or any other mysterious crashes you'd like to know about. You can drop us a line on Facebook. You can befriend us on Twitter. And as always, you can send us an email at conspiracy@discovery.com.